I'm going to call this meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's orders, we are meeting remotely. If you'd like to read more about this, it's available on the town website. I'm going to start with a roll call. Greg?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Sue?
Here.
Colleen here, and we have our town administrator, Evan Broussard, present as well. So tonight we are just going to, sorry, I have to look at my phone because the thing didn't print out. We're just going to start with Evan presenting the Capital Summit, his thoughts on it, and anything else that we need to know about the capital planning process this year, now that we have ClearGov.
Right. So did you send out the video from the Capital Summit?
Nope, I did not. I meant to, but I did not.
Okay.
But I think Matt has seen it. I attended, Sue attended. Greg might be the only one who probably hasn't seen it yet.
So I won't go through the whole slideshow, but we can make sure that you have access to that, Greg. I can just kind of give the high level overview of what we did. That works. So this was our first Capital Summit here in Grafton, and I think it went okay. I had a little bit higher hopes for it, but first one and all fully remote. So, I think it is what it is, but we started off with doing an exercise on return on investment and really going through what that means and how you would calculate that, as well as why you would use that, even though we're in the public sector, because a lot of folks don't think you use return on investment in the public sector. And then we kind of just jumped around through the different parts of the capital plan that you all had worked on, as well as what the schools had worked on. And we're just able to confirm a lot of those things. So now what we've been doing is we're building an Excel spreadsheet to upload everything as one coherent document up into our new ClearGov platform. And then that will sync up and will assign all of the capital plan items, as well as the budget and what we would need for revenue to cover those expenses. So that's ongoing, and we're pretty close on that. I just got the school's revised capital plan that Jay had mentioned during that meeting. I got that this afternoon, so now we can start working on that in earnest.
Awesome.
Okay.
So you're thinking that ClearGov will be online and available to us by the end of September, maybe early October?
Yep. So our original timeline was end of September, early October. I pushed them to give me early access, which they did, and it half works. The problem is that they're still building the revenue account side of the database, and so what it does is it allows me to create a capital plan, but then I can't assign any funding source to it, and it gets really wonky. So I've actually done it twice and deleted it twice because as I'm going through it and, familiarizing myself with it, I'm realizing that without the revenue sources, it winds up making no sense. And so that's why we're building this Excel sheet. They send you one that has all the criteria necessary for you to do one upload. So I've been just configuring it all there. So as soon as the revenue numbers are done, we should be able to just upload it and go from there. So it should be pretty turnkey after that. But
do we need to wait to do our training until after it's available, or is that something we can do while we're waiting and get that scheduled?
I would wait till it's available because again, they're going to show you things that we want to have full functionality so that people understand, when you click the revenue drop down or the funding mechanism drop down, here's what you do, and here's what you do if the funding source you're looking for doesn't exist, right?
Yep.
Because one of the problems we're going to run into, it's not a problem, but it's something that people have to understand, is a lot of times the accounting department creates an account number and an account name specific to each capital plan, or not each capital plan, each capital item. And so that won't exist until after town meeting. And so you have to kind of use catch-alls to do that, but we want people to be using the right catch-alls to make that happen. But I think it's going to be actually a pretty easy training, even just messing around in it like I have been, at night on the couch or whatever. It's really intuitive. It's just a matter of, they're still building out that part of the database. All of our expenditure stuff is already in there. so the output side is there, the input side is what's still being built.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about the capital summit or ClearGov?
So are we still looking at end of September, early October, or is it?
Yes. Yep.
So Evan, you mentioned that it didn't quite live up to expectations. What are you anticipating you'll try to, adjust for next year?
Well, I'm hopeful that for next year we'll be in person. I think that made the whole thing easier, much like we talked about at the select board meeting, with being able to, everybody writes down ideas and put things on, it's hard to do that in Zoom and get people, people are on their phones, people are sending emails. I mean, you can tell, right? And so it's just hard to draw people in, I think. Whereas when they're sitting in the room and, you're looking at them and they're looking at you and you're having a back and forth, it just was much easier. And, so if we're not in person and we're on Zoom again, I'm going to do some kind of icebreakery thing at the beginning. Zoom has all these new plug-in apps that I've been playing around with a little bit, and like you can do quizzes and things. So maybe we'll do something like that to just kind of warm people up, because otherwise it's just it's an hour and a half talking about finance, and I think people lose interest. When I've done it before, it's people come in, there's coffee and Danish, and it's a little bit more. That's the idea, is to get everybody really cordial and working together and seeing that this is one plan for one town and we're all moving the ball in the same direction. It's hard to do that on Zoom, I feel.
Got it. I mean, having said that, I was impressed, I guess, or it definitely made an impact, I guess, hearing person after person be a little bit kind of generous to the other participants, in the sense that you didn't see anybody like fighting really hard to kind of, I don't know, part of me was wondering if because all of the sort of maybe previous discussions and tacit agreements and whatnot, that all was all off the table, because they're all, dealing with a new process and a new town administrator. If there was going to be a little bit more people just fighting harder for their own departments and whatnot. So it was good to see that people were kind of in a collaborative mood, I guess, and willing to really separate the nice haves from the must haves.
Right. And that's really the intent, right? Is to get people, it's hard to say why someone else shouldn't get something when they're sitting right there.
Right.
And that's why I really like to do budgeting with everybody in the room, and capital with everybody in the room, because it's really hard to say, oh, fire doesn't need that. They're not doing anything. Now, I mean, just using fire as an example. That's nothing.
Sure.
In reality, but it's really hard to do that when the person's sitting right there. So you automatically take a lot of that off the table. Not to mention, all the lead up to it, where you say, no, it's one town, it's one bucket. We're gonna create a plan together. It becomes really unpopular to be the one person that tries to hold that up. So yeah,
Absolutely. It's good to see anyways.
good.
Colleen, Kyle's here as an attendee.
Oh, great. I don't know if I know how to do anything with that. Hi, Kyle.
Participant list more, make panelists.
Yep. Keep doing it. But nothing's happening.
I think he has to.
Oh, there he goes. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Kyle.
Kyle.
Hi, how are you?
So we just reviewed the Capital Summit. We're still kind of putting our thoughts together on that. I will be sending out a video of that later for you to review. And Evan's just kind of running down his thoughts with it, as well as ClearGov, which we might get into a little bit more, because I know I have a couple more questions about that. But
Great.
Colleen, I just sent the link out to everybody.
oh, great. Thank you.
Yep.
I know I was thinking about it, and then I had to ask Evan, I'm like, will this work for everybody? Because I'm a Google Drive flunky, and then I just never sent it out. He's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, I'll ignore that now. So back to the collaborative feel of the Capital Summit, I definitely noticed that with recreation when they were proposing ideas for the municipal building. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's part of what he's trying to do for the overall picture. So that was fun to see.
Right. I liked that too, because you could tell people, some people, they wanted to be a little defensive. But again, it's really hard to do that when all of your other peers are there. And so, you know, it will over time, that will erode and it'll just be par for the course. We can bring up anything and talk about anything without anybody getting offended or feel like their turf is being invaded, because we're just talking about ideas and we're just gonna throw stuff out there and see what sticks.
Yeah, it's a good process. And yeah, as long as it doesn't become individual conversations with individual department heads, I think that's the killer of that collaborative
Yep.
environment.
Absolutely. This year was a little tough. I had to do some rundown at the end if you watch all the way through. And it's just because I don't know all of the ins and outs and what people are used to and, you know, what we have going on. So, you know, that was really the only reason for that. But I think, you know, next year it'll be different. We'll have that whole plan built.
Cool.
Sue, did you have any input at all or?
No, I think I was a little more impressed than Evan was with what happened because this was a whole new thing for them. And I think they were a little uncertain as to what all was going to be involved with ClearGov. I don't know if they've had an opportunity to go through it before you had the Capital Summit. But I just think they were a little not sure how this was all going to go for the first time with Evan. So I thought they did pretty well. I thought it was a great presentation that Evan did, and I enjoyed it. And I think some departments are so used to not getting anything right away, they have to wait 2 or 3 years. So I think they were a little hesitant to kind of bring forth what they really wanted to do. So, but otherwise, I was more impressed with it than Evan was. So,
Jeremy's in as a participant.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, Evan, too.
Okay, thank you.
You know, you'd mentioned that it didn't kind of meet it up to your expectations. You could tell that people were multitasking a little bit, but you're going to get that in any sort of finance oriented meeting, I think, as you say, if people aren't around the table.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we don't have any more feedback, hey, Jeremy, on this, I did want to cover how you envision ClearGov impacting the capital process, any target dates where submissions need to be in by, when you expect us to start kind of reviewing it, and any thoughts on how that's going to look for us this year when we make our recommendation.
Yeah, so I really would like to keep that collaborative approach, not only with the department heads, but with you folks as well. I don't envision it being I'm going to give you a capital plan and you're going to just approve it without having dialogue and inputs and changes, right? So how I envision that is, you know, this will go out probably end of year will be somewhere near end of year will be the initial pass submission deadline, right? So all department heads will have their stuff in by
End of fiscal year.
and right. And we're end of calendar year, right? Because
Yeah.
we're gonna try. So then when by end of calendar year, any new things have to be submitted. And then so they get submitted and then they get approved by myself and Mary. We both basically give it the green light that it can go on to the plan, right? Because we also don't want we don't want people, you know, Park and Rec wants a Ferris wheel. Well, that's great, but it's not even going to hit the plan because we're not going to afford that in liability, whatever. So we're going to, you know, kind of screen that stuff out and we're going to give it, you know, its initial due process. The department heads are going to be able to rate things as they do the input process. And they're going to be rating it on a number of criteria, and we can add our own criteria if we find that the presets are not what we want them to be. And so that's going to kind of rate that in their own plan so that when we get down to the end and we have a finite amount of money and we're looking for what is the thing, what, you know, what's something we can accomplish here that's going to really tick something off for a department, check something off for a department. you know, it'll give us some feedback there. And so you will all be added as reviewers to the capital plan. So as soon as that capital plan gets, you know, basically we hit, I think the button is actually publish, it's called. You'll then be able to see it at any time. And so what I envision, and this is up to your group, obviously, is that we're going to take that raw capital plan. It's going to have some kind of definition because the software is going to do that for us. But then we're going to come together and talk about that whole list of things. And are there going to be questions to kick back to departments? Hopefully, and in my experience, by the time I sit down with you folks, I've already had those conversations with department heads, so I can answer a lot of questions just as we go. But, you know, maybe there's some that I don't know the answer to, and we have to do some more fact finding. But it's really, I would like it to be a collaborative process with you folks to then prioritize things in the plan, fit it into the budget that we agree we're going to be using. And then, you know, I'm going to republish that back out to the department heads, because one of the things that we did here during the capital plan is that often they would submit capital and things would randomly appear on it, and they didn't know why one thing was chosen and one thing wasn't, which I think, you know, is a little demoralizing for the departments that are trying to, you know, they're the ones that with the knowledge of what they do day in and day out. And if you don't go back to them and say, here's why we're doing something, or what do you think about us doing it that way? I just think that breeds animosity. So we're gonna try to avoid that. But I still see a pretty, you know, heavy role for CIPC. I know that it's an advisory group to, in theory, my capital plan, but I don't really do anything that way. And no good plan is going to come about in a vacuum. So I'd really like to do some iteration of that if everyone's on board.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. I don't know how everybody else-
When were you expecting to have the information available for review?
So it would be early January is when we would start.
Okay.
That's when it would be in there and live.
That seems kind of tight because it has to be submitted to the finance committee basically February 1st.
Yep. Okay.
Um,
We can accelerate that if you like.
The bylaw that was passed at fall town meeting was, we're expected to be working on it from mid-September to mid-December. So, I mean, we can be flexible in there, but that was what was proposed and approved last year. So,
Okay.
I wonder if that's gonna need to be updated now that we have this software, because when that was passed, we didn't have this. So a big part of that time was us weighting the projects and going through that process that ClearGov now just does instantaneously for us, which is great, but it is true, we have a bylaw that we need to,
Okay.
modify, so.
And we can certainly, we'll obviously adhere to that. It is, for me, the way that I've done capital for the past 7 years, that's really early and doesn't give a lot for things that come up, because you're now planning out for the new fiscal year and you're not halfway through the current one. And
Yeah.
you know, things change and it makes it a little bit inflexible. Not to say that we couldn't, you know, we have to give it to FinCom by February 1st. In my experience with FinCom, if we've got to make changes, we make changes and go back and say, hey, we had to tweak this. And,
Yeah.
you know, as long as it's a rational, reasonable idea, I haven't had, you know, I think that's reasonable. And I think FinCom would find that reasonable too. So there's always that too, you know, maybe we try to first pass capital plan. Yeah. Give it to them by February 1 with the understanding that March 1, we might come and say we're flip flopping two things because something happened.
yeah, that makes sense.
Evan, the finance committee, I don't think has ever had the capital submitted to them on time, according to the charter. So I think we should run through the bylaw for the first year just to see how everything is. And then maybe in the fall, we can change it.
Okay. Absolutely. We can do that.
Does anybody have any other questions about the process that we're about to start at all, or?
I'm just wondering about the broader picture of capital, things like roads and CPC. How we, how we include that, I guess, in some of the kind of monitoring and reporting
Mhm.
that this group has, in our charge.
Yeah, so I have been giving that some thought, and I think, so CPC gets difficult because you have the submission process, so they don't even know what they're gonna be asking for unless it's something that they've had from a prior year that they've been trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
One thing that I like about ClearGov is it's backwards, but once it's submitted and passed, we can add it to the capital plan so that it shows up in there as something that has been funded and how we funded it. We can do it in real time as well.
I think that was our intention, is to, so obviously this group wouldn't have any real input or authority for approvals. It really is more that this group, the intention was to try to encapsulate all of the capital spending in town, regardless of the funding source. And one of those just happened to be CPC with CPA funding. So it's more that we would like to get some input from CPC to just include in the capital plan and the capital reporting that goes into the annual report.
Right, okay. That's definitely something we can do. Roads,
I don't want to speak for the rest of the committee, though. That's just my understanding of kind of what our intentions were.
And I think we can do that. We can do a similar thing with roads. There is the ability to build multiple capital plans.
Mhm.
And the part that I don't yet fully understand is how and if we can mesh them together. Because what would be pretty cool is to build a paving, an asphalt management capital plan that's kind of its own standalone that talks back to the full database. But when you want to work just on that, you can focus on that and you can give that just off to, Brian and Paul and Kevin, and they can kind of manage that. And a lot of that is, you budget 800,000 and you get lucky and a bid comes in at 602. So there's all of that little nuance stuff that's going to pop up. And I haven't gotten far enough down the rabbit hole to know what that looks like for the plan overall.
Yep. That makes sense to me. They're talking about there's going to be significant leftover from the project on the common. I think they're
Mhm.
talking about something like 300K. Be great. Part of the function of CIPC is to monitor the completion of projects that have been approved and funded and whatnot, and having that level of transparency where people can see it came in under budget and actually here's where the money's going to be redeployed. Makes a lot of sense, so.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, but it would make sense to have those separate plans if that could work.
And Matt, adding to that, it's just even for other departments, it's nice to see that we can track all that and see where there is and see how much was left over from their expense. And we can see all that in the whole picture. So that's what I like about ClearGov.
Yeah.
We can track it all.
Absolutely. And when you get new buildings put online, you could, you're gonna have a roof that's gonna need to be done in 30 years. And so, having that stuff, in the plan, even if it's really far out, will be really, really useful so that we don't end up in a situation where there really are any surprises, quote unquote, because that was something that's happened quite a bit in the past where things got lost or they just got ignored or whatever. And then we had an emergent need and it was something that was a very high dollar thing that needed to be funded over the next couple of years. And, so it sort of put the capital budget in a bit of a crisis. So hopefully we shouldn't have that going forward.
Right. I think we will. I've in my previous 7 years, even when we're doing a really good capital plan, something always seems to come out of left field that, somebody has known about for a decade, but didn't bring up. So part of it is really trying to draw that stuff out.
Absolutely.
But I think, I think that's one cool feature. The other feature that we're gonna play around with is, we can, each asset or each purchase can have its own project page on the website, and it'll connect back to the capital plan. And I think what's neat is that, you can show, that, okay, we allocated $500,000 for the common, and we got 300 left over, or whatever the number was. And it'll show that right on a bar graph, the amount of savings that we had. And you can put pictures in the timeline, and it geotags it. And so I think, again, for the resident, it's a great tool to be able to go and say, oh, look at, they did this 5 years ago. I was thinking about, how that happened, or whatever it is. It's really good, transparent government, and I'm excited to get there.
Yep, I love the historical element of it. It would be wonderful to have a place where you could go and see, what roads have been paved over the past 5 years.
Mhm.
And then what CPC projects have been delivered. So
Yeah.
what, because it's CPC does its reporting, the highway department do their reporting. There's the road study committee and all that with recommendations, and it's all fairly transparent, but it's not in one place, and there really isn't a good historical place to go back and be able to compile data from. So
Right.
I'm excited about it.
I'm excited about it. And one of the things I really enjoyed before would be, I'd get a resident email that was upset about, something, or where the money goes. And not only could I explain it, but then I could also link it and say, you can go here, and all the data is there. Nothing's hidden. You can look at it. I mean, not everybody wants to drill down and do that. And so you got to do that in a non-condescending way. You can't just send the link, but you can tell people, like, you can answer the question, and then you can also say, and if you want to go further, here you go. And I've had really good feedback from that. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Absolutely.
I have to say, Evan, I'm a little disappointed we're not going to consider the Ferris wheel, but that's my problem. So
Well, CPC might, they have that extra money now, so.
There you go.
100,000 back, they could
Yeah,
finance. Maybe I should submit something, right?
there you go.
This has to be an old fashioned Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
Okay. Not the eye in London where you are currently. No?
We'll get the Boy Scouts to build it. Our pioneering skills.
There you go.
Evan, before you go, did you want to just touch on the couple capital things that we're going to see in the fall?
Yeah, so in talking to Colleen and Matt and the select board, I know that the traditional Grafton approach is you do all your capital or most of your capital in the spring. I am not used to that process. I've always funded capital based on timing and when we think, things might work better. And so what I'm doing right now is going to be requesting, it's about $146,000 worth of capital of things that I've found since I've started that I think are emergent. And so I think that this is a little bit of an outlier. I don't generally just throw stuff out there to spend money, but these are things that I've come across that I don't think should wait. And I'm trying to, tamp down. So Colleen, if I can, I think I have the ability to share already, right? I'm just going to throw up just a simple Word doc. I cut it out of another thing. So if everyone can see that.
Yep. Okay,
great. So let me just run down it real quick, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or take any feedback. So you'll see on here that there are 5 things. I'll note that they are all town side of the budget. I have had conversation with Jay Cummings, and he had nothing that was emergent. He's seen this list. So, there's nothing. I want to make sure that things are being approached equally. So let me just run down real quick. So first thing is at the municipal center. We were down for almost 2 weeks in the hottest part of the summer because our air conditioning went down, and we were in a building that upstairs was about 88 degrees. And so in exploring that, it turns out that we're spending about $8,000 a year having this company come and clean our cooling plates. It's like a sandwich of all these copper plates. And those plates just get dirty. And the problem is that the municipal center only has, it has the pretty much the exact amount of plates you need to cool the building, which is super efficient. But as soon as they get dirty, if you need 100% of your capacity and you're at a 5% loss, now the system starts to overheat. And so what we're looking to do is twofold. One is to put in what's called a Johnson strainer or a Thompson strainer. One of those two. It's essentially a giant sock that goes into the stream and arrests all of that outside particulate from getting into the system. And then the second thing is to add some more plates, and those plates would give us some extra capacity so that we're not taxing the system, because one of two things is going to happen. Not only do we have downtime in the summer when we don't want to have downtime, but you're also overheating those plates, which will eventually warp and fail. And then we'll have to replace the whole stack, which is quite costly. So that's project number one. I did do an ROI evaluation on that, and that should pay for itself within 6 years. So it's a pretty decent payback.
Evan, is there a threshold at which you sort of, if it's an ROI of 10 years, it goes down the,
It really depends. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I gotta be honest, I kind of play it by ear. You kind of get that feeling in your gut that like, oh, I could replace the whole boiler system in this building and it has a payback of 110 years. Well, that's a really bad payback unless the whole system doesn't work.
right?
And so, you kind of weigh that out. That's one of the reasons I like to do this in like a collaborative environment, because you start to gain consensus of, it can't be just to me, it can't be just if it's 10 years or more, we're not doing it, because sometimes it doesn't really, it doesn't matter. We have to do it or we don't have to do it. So short answer is I don't usually set one. I usually come up with what the ROI is and then see if that seems reasonable or not, just because there's so much nuance. The next thing is the demolition of 60 Depot Street. We have yeah, it is definitely vacant. So we have a vacant house that is owned by the town. We took it tax title in, I think, 2018. It is properly boarded, but it is an attractive nuisance. And we would really like to knock that down for two reasons. One is, the safety of the community, and second is the property values of the community. That doesn't help anybody. So I did get a quote of around $26,000. I added a little bit of buffer in there because, as with everything, we don't know what we're going to find once we start hitting it with the excavator, and just give ourselves a little buffer. Finance accounting software. We've been talking about this almost since February when I started, that we need to make a switch. We are moving over to Vadar. And since we're doing that midstream, we are paying two different softwares because we need to maintain the one we have and then also onboard the one. So we're going to request to grab about $16,000 to $16,625 to do that. The next one is carpet and furniture replacement. I know this seems superfluous and not emergent, but I'd like to explain how I got here. So we replaced carpet in the building department and my suite, the town administrator suite, as part of normal, wear and tear carpet replacement that we put into the budget. However, when we ripped it out, it was disgusting under there. The carpet is, like right around 50 years old. It's worn down to nothing. It has a whole bunch of particulate underneath it. And we only have 3 more rooms to go to finish out the municipal center and get rid of that rug, at least on the rooms that are consistently occupied. I'm not going to do it in a file storage room or something, but where people are working. And after seeing it, what came out of my office, I really feel as though I would not like to have my staff working in that. It just doesn't feel very good. So I would put forward that. And the reason I also put some furniture is that if we've if we do well on the carpet, I'd like to also replace a few of the very old desks in those offices while we have everything out of the room to do the carpet, rather than duplicate work. So that's what that's about. And lastly, been working very hard on technology. It has taken up quite a bit of my time as of late. And one of the things that we had identified was the firewall replacement, as well as adding an SMA device, which helps with security for people logging in from home via VPN. We're going to do that regardless of whether this money comes, but this coming out of the technology line then eats up my capacity to do the other technology things that we need to do. So that's why I put that in here. So that grand total is 146,625. Right now, our initial estimates are that we'll close about $1.9 million in free cash. We're also on the warrant, and I know I'm rapid firing this at you, but on the warrant, we're going to be requesting that we transfer the sale proceeds from 8 Pine Street, which are about $988,000. We're going to be splitting that in two and requesting that half get put into our normal stabilization account and the other half get put into the municipal capital stabilization account for future use. So $146,000 is nothing to sneeze at, but I think we're building some capacity in that capital budget. And I just think I would rather do these things and not wait unless, we were in some kind of financial jeopardy, which I don't think we are.
All right. Anybody have any questions about any of that? I know that technically wasn't on the agenda, but it has to do with capital and the process. So I think it's
As long as we're not voting on anything, we should be fine.
okay.
For me, I'm really pleased to hear that we're starting to build back the stabilization account. Just from being, years on finance committee, our reserves have been just steadily kind of taken down, not fast, but pretty steadily. So it'd be nice to see that going in the other direction a little bit, building our reserves back up.
One thing I did not mention that may be a little curveball is Mary and I may make the recommendation that we actually reduce both of those transfers by $50,000 and then put $100,000 into our OPEB trust.
Okay,
So
I support that.
yeah, we've been working on OPEB and we're woefully behind, as you know.
Yep.
And
It's whack-a-mole.
Yep. And so it kind of feels like, oh, we just got this good chunk of money in. That's great. How do we stabilize, use that to stabilize our budgets? And one of the probably ways is to throw some money at OPEB, because I think we have to have 300,000 in there to be able to start investing it. It has to, otherwise it has to just sit in the trust, in low risk. So, we're not really building anything.
Right.
And so we'd like to really hit that threshold and go, which I think this puts us over. So.
Nice.
That's good.
Well, I look forward to, just some additional thinking once you guys wrap your head around the budget and all the different reserve accounts and stabilization accounts
yeah.
and whatnot. Just some kind of plan to be steadily feeding something in there. We're never going to get there. We're in the same circumstance as every other town in the municipality, but
Yep.
I think from a bond rating, it'll help us a lot. It's something that comes up in every single bond review. Our just lack of real plan to fund that.
Absolutely. And I think, Mary and I we're getting the hang of Grafton finance a little bit more. We're doing a lot less of converting it into Munson speak and then back into Grafton speak. Just trying to wrap our heads around what's happening. And some things, work differently here and will work differently. And some things, we're going to make a little more our own style. But, I think we're making some good progress. I'm happy.
Nice.
Perfect. Does anyone have any other questions for Evan before we let him go? All right. Well, thank you for coming in. That was a lot of awesome information. And have a great night.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
So that was pretty much all we had on the agenda tonight, and now it's just to discuss when we want to meet again. So what's everybody's thoughts on meeting again? And should we wait to hear from Evan about how he wants to handle the bylaw now that we're onboarding ClearGov? Or do we want to wait until ClearGov's on and then we train with them, or what's everybody's thoughts?
The next, we really can't do anything until ClearGov is up and running. So maybe our next meeting should be ClearGov training once that is available.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. Everybody okay with that? All right.
Yep.
So rather than just pick a date right now, I'll wait till we officially find out when it's on and when their trainings are available, and then I'll shoot an email out to you guys and say it's probably gonna happen here. So hopefully with enough notice. All
Sounds
right.
good.
So the only other thing we had were minutes. I know Greg sent out a new copy of an updated version. The only one on the agenda tonight was for 7-8. We had previously voted on the June one, I thought, but you updated that one as well. We didn't.
No, I hadn't done that one before the last meeting.
Okay, so I only put 7-8 on the agenda, but I think we could vote for both because it's just a standard issue thing. It's not crazy. So I can take a motion for that. If everybody's read the updated ones.
What's the June date?
24th.
24th.
I make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from July 8th, 2021 and June 24th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, we'll go by roll call. Greg,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Kyle,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Colleen, aye. All right, motion passes. So that's all we have for tonight. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. We'll by roll call. Greg,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Jeremy. You said, okay, Kyle,
Aye.
Aye.
Sue. Colleen, aye. All right, good night, everybody.